One of the most important elements of self-awareness is accountability. Now, sometimes when people hear the word accountability, they assume it means blame. And accountability is not about attributing blame to anyone. It's about trying to introduce dialectical thinking. It's about trying to see things from multiple perspectives. And more often than not, when we're in a place of pain or when we feel an injustice has occurred, it's very difficult for us to get out of an egocentric mindset. It's very difficult for us to see the way that our choices, the way in which we interpret the world, and our responses can have a massive impact on how we feel about things and the way in which we move forward. We can't always choose what happens to us in life, but we can choose how we respond. And that response can be either life affirming or life draining. When we make life draining choices, we tend to be in a place of trying to figure out blame, whether it's us, whether it's them. And as a consequence, we're in a state of negative comparison, we are in a state of judgment and cynicism, and we're either feeling a sense of guilt or a sense of betrayal, a sense of inadequacy. We just feel unhappy in ourselves and we feel disconnected from others. Whereas when we are in a life affirming place, it's not that we approve of other people's behaviors or that we become a doormat. It's just that we try to practice seeing things from other people's perspectives and trying to differentiate between a person's character and a person's behavior. We recognize the fallibility of all humans. We recognize that we all make mistakes compassionately. And with that compassionate recognition comes the capacity to connect with people and to resolve issues as opposed to being in a place of judgment. We can also recognize the way in which our interpretations of events may not always be the most accurate information to be working with, and we can take a step back and become a little bit more objective, a little bit more discerning about what it is that we decide to do next. And again, it's all about making one good decision after another. I mean, how we feel initially is something that we can't really control, but how we choose to go forward is. And when we move back from trying to control all the external stuff, trying to control other people so that they don't hurt us, trying to control our initial response, we can concentrate instead on controlling things that we have influence over, which is our thought process, the stories that we construct, and the way in which we respond, our behaviors, the way in which we engage with other people. We have to make an effort to move away from dualistic thinking of good and bad. We have to recognize that we can be all of the above at any given time, and so too can others. And when we recognize ourselves and other people in their totality, we're more likely to be able to move forward with clarity as opposed to getting bogged down into things that really don't contribute to our overall well-being. Things like having to be right, having to prove a point. I mean, ultimately, this journey is difficult enough without disconnecting with people as you go along. We need each other, and we can be very attached to our own version of events. We can be very attached to preserving our ego, and we can be very attached to what is a familiar story to us, as opposed to the actual truth, as opposed to allowing ourselves to deconstruct our ego and to recognize some of the role that we have to play in our own suffering, because ultimately it is the layers that we add to our pain that actually cause the majority of our anguish. You know, it's the stories that we tell ourselves. Yes, things are going to hurt us and there's nothing we can do about that, but we can be very aware of the role that we have to play in how we respond, both in treating our own pain but also in the way in which we go forward, the way in which we decide to live our lives afterwards. And questions we can ask ourselves is, okay, what am I actually feeling? What am I thinking? What story am I telling myself? how do I actually feel about myself right now? And how is what is happening actually impacting on how I feel about myself? But not only that, how is how I feel about myself impacting on my response or my reaction to what is actually going on? And how can I move through this? How can I reduce my level of suffering as opposed to adding to it? In what way may I have contributed to this situation through my decision making, through my interpretations, and through my choices? And the more we engage with those questions, the more accountability we actually create in our lives. And again, it's not about being a doormat, it's just about recognizing that your responses are your responsibility. Hope everyone has a good day. I'll talk to you soon.